Bill Gates said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." What's a real-life example of this? Necropants. I was working as a stock boy in a supermarket, and when we had to fill the milk cooler, people would bust open a 12-pack of milk cartons and put them in one by one. On my first day I just placed the 12-pack in the cooler and cut the plastic off on one side with my box cutter and yanked it from under it, and the look of the store manager and the other employee who was training me was pure bewilderment. From that day everyone did it my way. Sparkamark 1977. Start of lockdown, my 9-year-old son was having worksheets emailed to complete at home. One day, left him at the laptop doing his maths while I made some dinner with my 3-year-old daughter. Walked into the living room with his dinner to find him asking the Alexa all of his maths questions. He memorized the equation he needed to ask, say 327 times 8, walked over to Alexa, asked her the equation, walked back to the laptop, walked back to Alexa to ask her again because he'd forgotten the last 2 digits, walk back to the laptop, enter the answer, walk back to Alexa to check it again. He had to keep walking backwards and forwards because he knew it was cheating, so he'd turn the volume down so I wouldn't hear from the next room. So while he thought he was being clever, he was actually taking more time to figure the answer out using the Alexa than it would have taken to do it himself. Plus of course there's the fact he was working on a laptop that has a calculator, and a Cortana assistant that does the exact same as Alexa, and he knows how to use both the calculator and Cortana but still chose to cheat in the least efficient way possible. Inquiring Kata. Worked as a laborer at a nursery one summer. Daily tasks included manually watering 15,000 plants each day. Put together a back-of-the-napkin plan to build an irrigation system and spent the next few weeks building it with some money from the boss. That system is still running 15 years later and does all the work now. I did automate myself out of the job and had to find another eventually. Couple years later got my engineering degree. I'm convinced engineers are inherently lazy people that will spend a disproportionate effort to make things easier. BBBBBBBBBB 99. My brother-in-law spent a whole summer trying to figure out how to fix his sagging deck at the lake, which he could in theory crawl under and jack it up. It would have been a tunneling project. It's a 60 by 60 area all long 2 by 6 boards. Massive. I sat there long enough with enough beers in me to come up with the idea of just cutting a square out of the sagging area about 3 foot x 3 feet, jacking it up then rescrewing down the boards. He paints the thing every spring with a roller anyhow, so it's not like the square cut shows up. He thought I was a genius. I was just lazy. Kojalison 99. We had to hold a thermometer in water in chemistry class. It probably was only 20-minute experiment, but your arms get tired after a couple minutes and you can't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan or it won't get an accurate reading. So instead of sucking it up and just holding the thermometer, my lab partner built a contraption out of lab books and paper clips to somehow hold the thermometer in the water without it touching bottom. It was the stupidest looking thing you would ever see in a lab class, and our professor even walked over and said, "If it looks stupid, sounds stupid, but it works, then it isn't stupid." My lab partner and I joked that he wasn't talking about the contraption but the intellect of my lab partner. ReadIT. I was a paid intern at a large company during one summer back home from college. My work 95% consisted of using SAP, import to Excel, clean data and generate reports, occasionally create some tools someone needed. In the February first weeks after getting a hang of my responsibilities, writing all the Excel formulas needed, and basically automating 99% of my work, I was chilling. I went from actually working from 9 to 5 to maybe 1 hour tops a day. Finding, importing, cleaning, and reporting usually took hours, but with all the formulas it took 2 minutes of clicking. I then helped the other cool intern get his shit set up so we could both just chill. We could take 2-hour lunches, paid for by the company, and nobody said anything cause we were just getting so much more done than the other interns. OFC I helped for special tasks when asked, but those were simple 20-minute tasks building something in Excel. Overall, was the easiest/stressless internship of my life. Microwave_warrior. One of my favorite examples is Andy Kim. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I don't think Kim is lazy so much as a genius. Andrew Joachim was a singer, songwriter who became famous under the stage name Andy Kim. He achieved success writing songs for bands like the Archies, possibly most notably, Sugar, Sugar. After his success he coasted for a while until his record label dropped him for lack of output. At that point he created his own label and cranked out hits like Rock Me Gently. When they saw this, the big record labels then bought his label under the assumption that they would then profit off of the songs he wrote and performed. He then very shortly stopped writing songs and largely lived off the sale of his label. Work smarter, not harder. L_M_very_smart. It took me like 3 months, but I automated a data pipeline to extract data, clean it up, and spit it out in an Excel or PDF format to one of our clients. I walked over to shoot the shit with the lady who handles my client and gives me tasks, and she told me we make $40K off them every month for that automated job. Fuck, I need to go start my own business. I_think_therefore_I_. When Carl Friedrich Gauss, the famous German mathematician and physicist, was in elementary school, around 1784, his class was assigned the busy work task of adding all the numbers from 1 to 100. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and so on. This usually kept the class quiet for half an hour or so. 7-year-old Carl was sitting quietly with the correct answer, 50-50, while the rest of the class was just starting, so the surprised teacher asked him how he came up with the solution. He replied that he added 1 and 100 and got 101. Then he added 2 and 99, and got 101. 3 plus 98 is equal to 101, and so on. He realized there was a pattern of 50 pairs of numbers with each pair adding up to 101. And 50 times 101 is equal to 5050. Chioggiani. When I was in college I had a job at an Italian fast food place with a reputation for its breadsticks. They came in frozen and needed a bit to thaw, so we'd take a giant 3 by 4 foot aluminum baking sheet, spread them out in a single layer with no spaces and cover it with a plastic bag, then leave it sit in the walk-in overnight. The next day you'd have to get a pair of tongs and move each stick to a new tray, turning them over, then cover the new tray with the bag and let them sit on racks for a couple of hours before brushing on the garlic butter sauce. This was tedious enough that you'd usually be ready to brush the butter on the first tray as soon as you turned the last tray. I was given this task for the first time one morning and just did not want to deal with it. I realized if I put the second tray upside down on top of the first one then turned it over and took the first tray out, I got exactly the same results. Blew the boss's mind when I did the 3-hour job in about 15 minutes. I was given a 5 cents per hour raise. Chorcon. I was once set to test a certain piece of equipment on a ship. The test involved attaching the unit to a reader, then run loads of command line commands. Then, one would have to make a copy of all the text, copy it into Word and save it as a, real crappy looking, report. There was hundreds of units, and they needed to be tested several times a year. We did about 20 to 30 a day. It would take several weeks to finish. I didn't know coding at the time, but always wanted to learn it. Within 2 months, I had made a program, even with a GUI, to spot faults with ease, instead of having to actually read the reports. The program could read 3 units at a time, and would automatically create a smooth PDF report and save it on our server, named with serial number and date. The job was now to attach 3 units, then wait for about 3 minutes, detach and attach new ones. Basically 30 seconds work, 3 minutes break. I could now test all units in a day, though I would typically spread it out over a couple more days. When I left the company, I left the program on the test computer. I got an email from an ex-colleague a few months later, saying they were using the program on several ships now. There wasn't any manual for the program, of course, but it was so straightforward that it wasn't needed. DLS 3141. An older company had a person dedicated to data entry, which boiled down to copying and pasting portions of data from text files into spreadsheet and formatting into a report. The person originally doing this job spent a full 40+ hours/week doing it, but was not very computer literate. When they retired, the company hired someone with actual skills. The new hire convinced management to let her work remotely after getting up to speed on the job. The first week at home was spent automating the entire job. The remainder of their multi-year tenure with the company was spent doing whatever they wanted, save the 10 to 15 minutes weekly to run their program and to answer the odd email here and there. All while getting paid full salary and benefits. They actually had to add in a few errors now and then to make it seem realistic. Number_plate_26. I work for a local government entering new, renewed existing and disposal of our assets. Primarily roads and stormwater, essentially anything that is near a road that the local government has to maintain. The old guy who left, at 72 years old, legit wrote everything down before punching it into Excel to be converted into our financial database. When I started, I was shown how the job worked and I asked did I have to write stuff down. My boss said no, that was just his old school way of doing it. So instead I immediately entered data into Excel, skipping how long-winded first process and cut the job time down significantly. Due to this I got more duties and responsibilities. But it came with a raise. So I guess that's a 50-50 win. UK_UK. Worked in a local adult education center. One of my main tasks was to make calculation about how many people enlisted for a course, how many of them got discounts, unemployeds e.g., how many men/women/age etc. That was needed to calculate upcoming courses fees etc. That was my only work there and I hated it. This was in early 90s, so PCs were a thing in our offices, but I had no idea how to write a program or use a database to use this informations. Lucky as I am, our center had an interesting policy: when you want to educate yourself, you can attend that class for free. And when it's during the work time, then this is work time, as long as my supervisor is okay with that. She was. So I spent 3 months studying database structures, scripting, coding etc. I told my tutor what I want to do and he helped me to write a script that grabs all necessary informations from the course's database, copy that into another database, and then I went crazy and wrote code that was insane. I implemented what-if scenarios thanks to filters. At the end I was able to do my work, that needed 6 hours a day within 15 minutes. I mean, before that it took e.g. an hour to have all the necessary informations to have a, how many unemployed single-parent women does it need to make the costs of that course even. I had everything back then. Now you want statistics: how many single-parent disabled foreign women at the age of 80 to 90 are needed for the next 2 years to keep the ornithology course running? Sure, no problem. Clickety-click, done. After that, I started the PC in the morning, grabbed all the data, ran my script, was done within 15 minutes and then read the book I brought from home. At the end of the day I gave my supervisor several dozens of papers, statistics, predictions etc. and said that was a lot of work, and went home. My supervisor was super happy with me because I did so much more now and was super effective. John_C_random. I worked goods in for an aircraft manufacturer as a summer job at university. Parts would arrive, we'd open them and key in all the details into a terminal. That bit was long-winded. I discovered the terminal keyboard has assignable shortcuts, and set up a bunch of them for all the boilerplate such that keying in an item was about 6 keystrokes. Saved myself and my workmate hours every day, which we would spend pranking each other, other warehouse staff and staff at other sites. Midwest Bulldog. I had a manager in my 20s who detested the fact I turned a 2-hour process into a 15-minute process. It exposed how much lazier he was compared to me, because when the higher-ups learned from other people at my level that I created the program, they took me aside and told me he took credit for it. They asked me how I felt about that. I told them what decisions they make regarding the manager's character is their decision. Just put yourselves in my shoes and consider it from that angle. They did nothing and I took the concept to a competitor who invested the money into making the program more robust and proprietary. My name was line 1 on the patent and trademark documents and I did well enough to semi-retire at 45. I credit Lee Iacocca for the inspiration. He went through a similar problem with higher-ups at Ford and his answer was to take his brain to Chrysler who would value it. Yoinky 2013. Back in high school a lot of kids used to walk through his park to get home/to school. A portion of the path went into the woods because it was just quicker than walking the actual trail. At one point in the walk through the woods, you had to go up this small but tedious hill, nothing major but it took like 10 seconds of hard work to go up it. You couldn't go around because one side was a small cliff to the creek below and other side had dense trees. One summer, a bunch of us got together and decided to just dig through that hill to make it flat. It took like 14 of us 3 good days to get through it. It was a hard 3 days but it was definitely worth it. Saved 10 seconds of hill climbing every morning and afternoon, 150 plus days of the year. And it wasn't just us, but hundreds of other kids who took the same party every day. Sometimes you need to put in a lot of work so your future selves can enjoy the easy way out. Jake Vinson. At the turn of the 21st century, Init Road Global's server infrastructure began showing cracks. Anyone that had been in the server room could immediately tell that its growth had been organic. Rack-mount servers sat next to recommissioned workstations, with cables barely secured by cable ties. Clearly there had been some effort to clean things up a bit, but whoever put forth that effort gave up halfway through. It wasn't pretty, but it worked for years. As time passed, though, a proprietary gateway server to communicate with credit processing agencies would crash more and more frequently. And these were bad crashes, too, the kind of crashes where the server wouldn't respond to ping and would have to be restarted manually. It wasn't really a big deal for the admin, Eric, to hit the restart button on the server when he was there, but that was only 40 hours a week. The credit union needed it to be active 24/7, but was unwilling to hire 24-hour staff in the data center. The problem kept getting worse and worse, so the IT manager called up a meeting. "Okay guys, what can we do about this?" asked Laura, the IT manager. "Can you guys in dev fix this?" "No," began Eric, before anyone in dev could respond. "The issue is with the server, not our software." "Well, when does the support contract end?" 2 years ago. "Great. And we can't replace the unit while we're in a budget freeze." Laura wasn't sure what to do. "Well, what's our workaround for now? What happens when it goes down?" "Right now, I just hit the restart button." "Okay, well, we'll have to replace it once I get the budget approved. For now, though, what can we do? We need this online all the time." Laura sighed and began tapping her pen on the table. "No one has any other ideas?" At this point the room fell silent and everyone tried to avoid making eye contact with Laura. Eric had a script running that would ping the server every few minutes and alert him if it didn't respond so he could halfway proactively keep things running. It had to be restarted manually whenever it crashed, so there was no easy way to fix it remotely. "We could build an admin robot," Eric joked. Hours later, Eric was in the data center, hitting the restart button again, disappointed that the meeting had ended without a workable solution. Laura walked into the room and greeted Eric. "So, at our meeting earlier, you suggested building a robot." Laura had apparently taken his suggestion seriously. "Is that something we can really do?" "Well, I was just key. I mean, I don't know anything about circuitry, or how to build robots." Eric tried to keep his tone somewhere between serious and kidding, so he could gauge Laura's reaction. It was then that he idly looked at his computer, which had just ejected a disk image DVD he'd burned. It sparked an idea, but it was too absurd to say out loud. Still, he couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. "What?" Laura asked. "It's nothing," Eric responded. "It's stupid. We're desperate. Do you have an idea? No, it was really stupid. Eric sighed. I just had the idea that a CD-ROM drive in an old system could eject and hit the reset button. It was a ridiculous idea. Wait, Laura began, could you really do that? It was another uncomfortable moment for Eric, but she seemed serious, so he just went for it. Yeah, I could, but it's hardly the best solution. I mean, I'd have to position the servers just right, somehow get the heights and alignment correct, and update the polling script to eject the CD-ROM drive anytime it didn't respond to ping. And that was exactly what Eric found himself spending the rest of the afternoon setting up. He found an old PC, updated his script to ping the server every 2 minutes and eject if there was no response, and with the help of a few phone books found the perfect height and position on the floor. At any point while he was setting it up, he expected Laura to jump out from a corner and yell, "Just kidding," but it never happened. Finally, Eric stood up, and ashamedly admired his work. He slapped a label on it that read, "Itapman Robot," and another below with big underlined letters that read, "Do not move." Years later, and long after Eric had left, the faulty server was taken offline and replaced with a new one working under a new IP address. During the swap, Itapman Robot was moved to a neglected corner of the server room, plugged back in, and promptly forgotten. It spent the last weeks of its life dutifully opening and closing its CD-ROM drive every 2 minutes, reaching in vain for the restart button that it'd never touch again. Dathis. I knew a guy who had a low-level data/reporting job. He had several daily/weekly work responsibilities, including a bunch of reports that needed quite a bit of tweaking from raw data to finished product. But like I said, low level. We didn't find out until way later, but he had set up macros for each of his major responsibilities where he could. Once set up, he'd just run the macros to do his work, but then he'd, smartly, hold off on delivering the reports until just a little before the deadlines. He'd hit every assignment and was seen as reliable. He also would complain about the workload so people would leave him with that work. I doubt he did a full hour of work a day after he set up what he did. Eventually he left the job for one with better pay. But damn did he work lazy. Also, he was smart not to reveal until the end, because had he told them about it he would have gotten a pat on the back and would have been given a whole other workload, on top of maintaining those macros/etc. Dude milked the job, not the other way around. This button sucks. One of my favorite stories from my youth was The Tale of the Man Who Was Too Lazy to Fail. I got fed up with handwriting itemized suborders at work, so I set up a spreadsheet that you can just fill out. Then I got tired of having more than one program open, and not being able to search within and among those order sheets, at least not automatically, or easily, so I'm having our FileMaker guy integrated into our greater ordering and invoicing system. I was frustrated at the pointlessness of sorting a giant pile of paper invoices from an unpaid stack to a paid stack every month, so I just used the accounting software to keep track. I became so irritated with having to fill out a multi-page, printed spreadsheet for every single order, sometimes just one item, 2 pages in, and frequently, there would be those pesky itemized suborders, that I condensed the items into most used, put them all on one easy-to-read sheet, and encouraged my coworker to simply write out the more uncommon items at the bottom. Basically, I hate busy work, and paper invariably leads to busy work. I have tried to reduce the use of paper in our office, but have not been entirely successful. We have to have written order forms available, because sometimes the orders are coming in too fast to be able to type it all quickly and correctly, and have to keep some paper records for things like organic, FDA, and USDA audits, but all in all I'd say my absolute hatred of filing has reduced busywork here by at least half.